Hey folks, it's Fernando doing our video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this video I'm going to be addressing the current situation in Argentina. Now this was requested by one of you guys, a viewer, in the comment section below. I also got several emails asking about this, but as I always say, if you have any specific video requests, stuff you'd like me to address in future videos, just let me know in the comment section below in these videos and I'll do my best to address them in future videos. Okay, regarding what's happening right now in Argentina, in case you haven't heard, there's been a pretty sharp crash in the currency, in the Argentine peso. If you look up Argentina last 24 hours, you see these headlines: emerging markets crisis, why currency markets are worried about Argentina. Argentina Currency Crisis. Argentina's peso has fallen 52% against the dollar this year, and basically in these last couple days Argentina's peso has lost 20% of its value in just a few hours, in just 2 days, and it's quite sharp. The interest rates has been hiked to 60%. There's really a loss of trust in the Argentine economy. Now, for those of you that don't know what's going on over there, no, Argentina does not have a socialist government right now. It used to have an extremely corrupt, left-leaning government, which was the Kirchner government. First Nestor Kirchner, which was these people, and then Cristina Kirchner, which is this woman. They ruled Argentina for 12 years. First Nestor, then Cristina for 2 terms. This woman ruled Argentina like a dictator. Basically, her husband and herself, they looted the country like a mafia. That's exactly what they were. From the moment they got in power, they just pillaged the country like common criminals. That's really what they are. They've always been that. Just they ended up in a position where they could steal from the country directly. Billions of dollars, cash, bank accounts. They ended up buying media groups as to have their own press on their side. They bought companies. They bought construction companies, which they later well, not bought, but they would create buying them, creating them, giving themselves building contracts, and overpaying themselves. So for example, if a road costs $100 million, they would charge to the country, they would pay $200 million. 100 of those were their own bribe, and the money they were making themselves in building that route was poorly made and maybe not even needed in the first place, just built so as to have an excuse, so as to steal. So this kind of nightmare that I'm explaining was what happened in Argentina for 12 years. Beyond that, there's really not been a non-Peronist government that managed to finish in full term. This is kind of like a myth, which is actually a reality. Ever since the return ever since the end of military dictatorships, juntas in Argentina, no non-Peronist government has managed to complete a term. They've always been overthrown by the Peronists themselves, who do not want anyone but themselves in power. The Peronist party has been the disease of Argentina since the beginning. They've been in power for more than they should. They've just been ruining the country ever since. And you see it this way because Alfonsín could not finish his presidency, neither could De la Rúa, and from the moment Macri took control of the country, they made sure that everything was politically unstable. They've been trying to overthrow him ever since he became president. That's a reality. The man has made mistakes, no doubt, but he's been overall a pretty good leader by all accounts. Macri has still now the support from the international community. Macri is one of the few presidents that is in good terms with Donald Trump. He's a businessman himself, knew him from the time he was doing business in the United States. So it's a pretty good position in that regard. At the same time, he's in good terms with European Union leaders as well. He's a pretty good politician, a very good businessman clearly as well. And all of that is exactly what Argentina needs. Now, if we're going to be looking at what Macri inherited, was a burned house, a bankrupt country. Now, you cannot, the first thing you do when you become president of a bankrupt country, you cannot just say, this country is destroyed, this country is in ruins, bankrupt, run for your life, there's no hope. You cannot say that, because if not, you're not going to be getting the much needed investors that you need. You need, when you have a destroyed country, you need someone to trust in you and the potential of that country, so as to put money in there, invest, make something out of that. Now, what Macri did was start in this very fragile position. For example, one of the things that was left behind by the Kirchner government was rates and services, power, water, natural gas, all of that was practically free in Argentina. Your power bill, for example, was often less than a cup of coffee in a coffee house. Yes, that was actually what happened for many people. They would be paying, their power bill per month was less than a cup of coffee. That's not realistic. There's nothing free. You always end up paying for these kind of things. When you have free stuff, same like in Venezuela, where gasoline is cheaper than water. That's not realistic. That's insane, stupid, and never works. What ends up happening when you have free, free as in nothing really being free, when you have free electricity, you're going to be paying for that through inflation. And inflation is the worst way in which you rip off the poorest of the poor in your society. So Macri had to take that into account. So he went with a very slow motion adjustment of the economy. He couldn't just start charging people what power was really worth. He couldn't jump into a real economy with a fantasy that he inherited. Now, this very slow economy, this very slow adjustment meant that it was a very fragile one as well. A very quick shock adjustment of the economy would have thrown a lot of people into poverty and made a quick change for companies going in, private investments going in, but it would have been pretty drastic for society in general. Instead of staying and starting to drop the poverty from 30% to 28% like he managed to do at some point, poverty would have jumped quickly to 35-40% if all of a sudden he went into a shock adjustment of the economy. Now, this was a very slow adjustment that depended on foreign investment, which did come into the country. But what happened was mistakes, political mistakes, economic mistakes that he made as well, but also bad luck, in all honesty, because they had some of the worst crops. There was a very bad drought that destroyed 15 billion worth of crops, worst crops in many years. And also the international situation for most emerging markets was also drastically changed in the last couple of years. All of that created a very much of a distrust in the ability of Argentina to perform as it should. Thus, the market said, this slow adjustment is not working, you need a very quick one. And since he was not doing it fast enough, people lost faith in the country. At the same time, you have the Peronist opposition trying to destroy you from within, always threatening to overthrow, always. Keep in mind that the Kirchner, the Peronist party, has billions at their disposal to try to damage the economy as much as they can, and they have the muscle on the streets so as to create riots, civil unrest, looting of stores, supermarkets. All of that they can do, and they try to do as much as they can while trying to create as much of a complicated political situation for Macri from within. So what's going to be happening right now is the crisis is going to be continuing. The peso could devaluate further. Yes, I think it devaluated pretty sharply at 42, now went down to 39, 38, but who knows, depending on how quickly the International Monetary Fund gives support to Macri, as well as some of the other presidents and some of the other, and the rest of the international community, as well as his ability to navigate this crisis right now, depends on how bad the following months it will be or not. Very fragile situation. He could be overthrown. Yes, it is a possibility. I think he's going to be surviving because he's not as dumb as some people think he is. They're not giving him the credit they should. Guys, for you in Argentina, if you think Macri is bad, look at Venezuela, because that's where you were heading. There's no mistake, there's no confusion whatsoever. Ask any Kirchner supporter what their opinion is of Venezuela. None of them, they're so damn stupid, none of them admits that that's a dictatorship. They always find excuses. At the end of the day, that's the greatest problem Argentina has. 30% of the country is just stupid. More than stupid, is corrupt beyond help. 30% of the Argentine population is corrupt beyond hope because they support Cristina Kirchner returning to power. That's the legacy she left behind. An entire generation of young adults that are corrupt to the bone, and there's really no hope for them. And that's why you cannot turn this ship around in just a couple years. You will need 2-3 terms of someone like Macri, someone like, not this woman here, someone like Vidal, Maria Eugenia Vidal, which is also a good politician, currently the governor of Buenos Aires, doing a great job, this woman, with that legacy that she inherited from Daniel Scioli, that bastard. So she's doing very well. She could be president if Macri doesn't have the numbers for next year. So these two could be a possibility. After 4 more years, you're going to be seeing somewhat of a change. But you need at least, honestly, you need at least 10 years of seriously running things as you're supposed to, so as to fix things. Argentina is a country that has a ton of natural resources, but that alone is not enough. You need to do the right thing for several years so as to fix things. So that's what could end up happening. Hopefully nothing too terrible. Keep in mind that December is always a very tough month in Argentina, guys, for you over there. And my advice for my fellow Argentines, which is something that's also being asked, what's my advice? You're basically looking at the same thing. No, it's not the same situation as 2001. Banks are not in the same position. So a bank run like that, in banks collapsing and the entire country collapsing and Macri leaving in a chopper, is a very unlikely situation. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, because it is Argentina after all, but it's very unlikely. But you're going to be seeing attempts to overthrow him, that's for sure. And you've been seeing it all along since he became president, so that's not going to be changing. They're just going to be charging harder now that they see a bit of blood in the water, as the beasts that they are. So be careful with that. Be careful on the streets, as you should always be in Argentina. Stock up. I mean, prices are going to be going up for sure. There may be problems with supply. Food, dry pasta, rice, that stuff. Build up a supply of some affordable food. I know that the situation is tough for a lot of you guys over there, but you really should have something to defend yourself. Hopefully you have a firearm, know how to use it. If not, always keep in mind there's the Tiro Federal Loma de Zamora, where my good friend Baigorria is still giving classes, where you could go and take some classes from him, which is an extremely valuable asset for anyone that needs to learn how to use properly a firearm. Stock up on food, be ready for this kind of stuff. Guys, that's gonna be all for now. Remember to subscribe to the channel, check out my other videos, check out my website, which has a ton of information, and also my book, The Modern Survival Manual, which was based on the economic collapse of 2001, and it's gonna be quite relevant to what's happening if things turn for the worse right now. Link's gonna be there below. That's gonna be all now for now. Take care. See you on our next video.